In today's video, I will show how you can build this AI system that fully automates SEO article writing. It does all of the research, it generates all of the ideas, and when writing the article, it even matches the tone and voice of the site on where we're gonna place the article. So it basically does everything, and without actually telling you about that, let's get right into the video. So the first thing that we're gonna do in the video, I'm actually gonna show you and give you a high-level overview on how this system works. Then I'm gonna share a real example that this system generated, and once I do that, then we go in depth and check this system step by step and what it is doing in the background to make the final product. So let's start off by hitting the test workflow. So I'm gonna trigger the article writing for this particular case, and off it goes. So basically how this works, just to give you a high-level overview, right now let's imagine we have a placement site. So I picked a random blog from the web, theminimillionaire.com, and let's say our client is industrialvision.co.uk, so for which we're trying to redirect users or to link to that site. And now it's doing all of the research about that. So just let's get into this part first. So in the research part, we're doing three kinds of research. First is the placement site research. So in this case, we're researching the minimillionaire.com. Then we have the target site research. So then we're researching our client, in this case, industrialvision.co.uk. We want to understand what their business is about and how we can potentially, link those two websites together and generate article. And then the third is the target keyword research. So let's say we have a target keyword, industrial vision systems. And then what we're doing is actually supplying this keyword in the Google, getting top 5 results from Google, and then scraping all of those top 5 results to understand what were the topics that they wrote about and what could be the potential, things that we could write about or what they didn't talk about. So basically we allow AI to explore different ideas, see what competitors are doing, what they're missing, and maybe do something better. Then when we are done with all of the research, what this does, it actually does the topic research for the title and outline. So it takes the topic of our article, let's say industrial vision systems in this case, it does a very broad research and then supplies all of that information with the placement site research, target site research, competitor site research, and that topic research in order for us to generate the title and the outline. And this is what we're doing in this case exactly. Then when we have the title and outline, we're writing the introduction separately, and actually we're doing research for introduction separately as well. Once the introduction is done, we are then writing each section of the article separately, and that does a few things. First of all, I noticed that we can do then research separately for each section, which produces better results. And second of all, when you write sections separately, it actually tricks the AI checkers, so it produces a lower score when you try to detect if the article was written by AI or not, which I'm also gonna show very quickly. So basically in this section we're doing that, just writing section by section, and then finally we're making a couple of edits that are necessary based on the requirements, let's say for our clients, to finalize the article, and then sharing that article in the Airtable. So how does the final article look like? So actually for the final article, or for the example that I'm going to show, I took again the minimillionaire.com blog, and I used the open.ac.uk site, which with the target keyword, the Open University. And this was the article that it produced. So as you can see, it's quite extensive. Of course, I'm not going to read through it. You can pause the video and read through it yourself. But then what it did, it also, for example, added the link to the client automatically for us, like so. And then if you, for example, copy this whole article and paste it into the AI detectors, like so, you can actually see that the score is not 100%, which is typical from AI writing. In this case, it is 36% chance that this was generated by AI. And in my opinion, this is very low, because if you try to generate articles randomly through OpenAI, through Claude, through Gemini, you will notice that usually this score is always 99.99, and with this system you're able to kind of get that lower. And if you even have a human in the loop that reviews these articles and is capable of doing some additional research and tweaking a few things, you can even get this down to 10%, which I think is amazing for how effortless this is. So now we went over this very, very quickly, I know, but let's jump into this and understand step by step how this system works and maybe how you can replicate this by yourself. By the way, if you want to get this template, I'm going to actually put a link down below where you can download it from Gumroad, or there's going to be a maybe other type of link, but basically you can also download it, but if you want you can also rebuild it, so it's totally up to you. But the whole thing starts with the Airtable, because that's how we are triggering this workflow. So in here we have actually 3 predefined columns. Placement site, so this is the site where we are planning to post the article. Target URL, the site to which we are linking, and the target keyword is the keyword on which the link is going to be added. And then we have a button. On the button click, it just basically fires a webhook and it starts writing the article like so. And then other information is the placement site research. So this is when we scrape the data, we analyze it through AI, we put it here. For the target site research, again, we scrape the target URL, add the info here. Then we have target keyword research. So that's when we check the Google search, get the top 5 results, add the info here, and then article outline, and then final article. So these are the fields that you need in the Airtable if you want to build this yourself. But then let's go to understand this step by step. So again, as I mentioned, on a button click, it fires a webhook. In this case, okay, still listening for event, but basically it takes the record ID in the Airtable. You put the get record operation, and it's at first it's gonna get you only this information. And in the first step that we do is the placement site research. I'm using a regular HTTP request where I'm basically adding the get method, and then I'm adding placement site URL in here, so it scrapes that placement site. And actually you could do this with Firecrawl, and in my opinion it would work much better, but I wanted to make this as cheap as possible for the sake of this video, so I'm using regular get request. But if you're doing this professionally, I would suggest using Firecrawl or a service similar to that. But basically we then supply the domain, and we basically get all of the HTML like so. Then we pass it on to this AI node, and we basically just say that, hey, this is the info we scraped. I need you to extract all of the details, the key details, content types, content formats, tone and voice of the article, and so on. And for this, I'm using Gemini 2.0 Flash. So first reason why I can use this is because it's totally for free. You have a limited amount of requests you can make for free. So I'm using, for the sake of this video, again, I'm using it for free. But Gemini is good for these type of use cases because it has a very large context window. And if you add a lot of script data, it's going to be able to handle it. But then basically AI does its analysis and adds everything into the Airtable, into the placement site research that I mentioned here. Then the next step, we do the target site research. So again, very similar, HTTP request with the get method, then the target URL. Over here, it scrapes the data and then it passes over the data to AI. In this case, again, we're saying that what are the key details of the website, what is the tone and style, what do they sell, if they sell anything, and stuff like that. And again, when we do that research, we actually add it in the Airtable like so. So we just match by ID, paste all of that text in the Airtable, and we have the placement site and target site research done. Then the third step, which is a lot more interesting, is doing the target keyword research. And for this, I'm using a service called Tavily. So api.tavily.com is the endpoint that I'm using in this case. But basically what it is capable of doing is that you can actually type in the query. In this case, it is our target keyword. And based on that target keyword, it gets the top 5 search results from Google. So as you can see, for example, our client, the industrialvision.co.uk, actually ranks number 1 for this keyword. But we get all of the websites from the top 5 results, like so. We even have, a quick summary about the content. Then what I'm doing, because this is actually returns like a results array, I'm splitting that array with a split out node, and then adding a loop over here that loops over each URL. And while it's looping over each URL, we're analyzing that competitor separately or that search result separately. So again, over here is going to be a regular get method, which takes in the target URL, or not the target URL, but basically the target URL from the loop, because so again, our client, let's say in this case, was extracted as a first result, so it's supplied as a first result and as an example over here. But basically, just like in here, we're then doing very similar thing. We're scraping the all of the HTML, giving it to the AI, saying that this is our competitor, was the result in the Google search, and let us know what they're doing right in order to rank in the top 5 results that we need to do. And once we do that, we again add this into competitor analysis Airtable field, which is going to be target keyword research over here. So for example, I can show you how this looks like. So it takes, for example, the URL analyzed, and it gives all of the details about it. Then we scroll down, and then we have another URL over here that's being analyzed, and it also adds information about it like so. Then when we do that, I basically merge all of those into one, and I limit to output only one item because I only need a record ID in the next step. Oh yeah, and we can see that it finished running, so we can check later once we go go over all of this. But then basically the next thing that you have to configure is the Perplexity research. And I think this research is actually very important because it sets the tone for the title and the outline. And when you set the tone for the title and the outline, both of these things are going to heavily determine how your article ends up being. So if we wouldn't do this research before title and outline generation, then I think the quality of the article would reduce highly. But since we're doing everything as I think we should do. I don't know what I was trying to say there. Anyway, so basically in this edit node, I'm pre-configuring the prompts for the Perplexity. So over here, I'm basically supplying a lot of context. I'm adding the blog post on which we're gonna post. I'm adding the target URL to which we're trying to link the article. I'm adding the target keywords. I'm adding the target research, placement site research, also mentioning to which keyword we're trying to rank. And then in the user prompt, I'm adding more instructions. And all I'm doing that in the edit node, because then in the Perplexity node that I configured here, so this is the URL I'm using, method is post, and I'm using Sonar Deep Research for this one. Of course, you can use Sonar Pro, but I just find the result for this is very important. So I'm using a more expensive model for this. But then I'm basically supplying from the edit node. I'm supplying those prompts like so, and I'm actually turning them into strings because otherwise you would get an error. So if you're doing something similar when you are basically defining prompts in a separate node, keep in mind that you need to stringify those prompts, and this is the request that we're making. So if you look on the right, you can see this is the full request we're making to Perplexity. Then once we get the research for Perplexity, that's when we start the writing process. So you can see that it took a while for us to start the process, but we finally did. So for the title, again, I'm supplying basically saying this is the placement site where we're going to post the article. Then in here, I'm supplying all of the target keywords, target website analysis, placement site analysis, competitor analysis, research for SEO writing. Of course, I don't know why it didn't actually pick up the competitor analysis. I might need to check into that. Maybe I did some kind of mistake. Oh, or maybe, yeah, maybe I renamed the node sites for target keyword. Yeah, it should be target keyword research. I renamed it and I forgot to update it. But anyway, basically, I just supply all of this info. And then what it does, it just spits out the title. So in this case, how machine vision systems / manufacturing costs for small businesses. So you can immediately see how this title links both of the sites. So the placement site is the minimillionaire.com, where there are blog posts about how to start a business, small business, how to be an entrepreneur, and so on. And then we have our client, which is writing about vision systems, and this title matches those both very accurately. Then we actually have the outline generation, and for the outline generation, it generates everything in a JSON format. So again, I have very particular prompts for the outline and how I want to generate, but essentially I just supply the same information, target keywords, target website analysis, placement site analysis, that sort of thing. But the important thing is that I'm using structured output parser because I want to have the output returned as separate headings. And that is because we're then going to write article by section and not all at once. And we're doing that because we want to this article be more detailed, and we also want the quality to be good, and we also want to at least reduce the checkers that check the AI writing, at least to have this reduced by a bit, and that helps with that. So we have the output. You can see we have the H1 explanation, what we should write about. Then we have the heading H2, what small manufacturers need to know about modern inspection technology, explanation, and so on and so forth. So we basically generated 6 headings. And then what we do is then we add that outline into the Airtable. So if I go here, you can actually see this outline is being added here. I'm actually adding the outline here is in case if I need to troubleshoot or I need to go back and understand if we did the research properly or not. But basically then as the outline, and once we have the outline, we again use the split out node to split out all of the headings one by one. And then we start the article writing itself. So then the first thing is the if node. If node checks if the first heading is H1. If it is, we then redirect it to this path where it does another Perplexity research and writes the introduction. So here again, I have a prompt defined in the edit node. In here, I'm using Sonar Deep Research again as a model because again, introduction sets the tone for the article, just like the title and the outline. So I'm paying a bit more for the research in this part. And then when we have the research, we're actually supplying this for the AI. So let me just check what we're supplying. So we are supplying the title, target website analysis, placement site analysis, and the SEO research done for introduction. We're supplying everything for AI to write the introduction. And then for the model, we're actually using Claude Sonnet 3.7. So actually, I personally haven't noticed a huge difference from, let's say, Claude 3.7 or OpenAI 4.1. But I know that other people are raving how good it is at writing. So I trust basically other opinions on this. Maybe I'm not that good of a writer and I can't tell that much of a difference, but I'm using Claude for this part of writing and for introduction, and then it simply adds that introduction into the Airtable in the final article field. So if you go here, it just add it here, and then adds the introduction, and below are added the sections. So how do the section writing works? Well, then we follow very similar pattern, as you probably already noticed throughout this video, is that we define the prompts for the section. And again, these prompts are completely different for each part, but the structure is pretty much the same. So we define the prompt for the research to research basically the section. Then we research the section here, but in this case we're using Sonar Pro because it's cheaper, it's faster, and then we already paid a lot of money for introduction and outline, so I'm saving a bit of money on the sections. But if you have a lot, you can use Sonar Deep Research, and it's gonna give you better results. Then when we have the research, what I'm actually doing here is that I'm splitting out the citations, because you can notice that in here it has these citations, but they're not directly added in the content that I'm sharing later on for the AI. So what I'm doing is actually I'm splitting out the citations, then I'm changing the structure of the citation. For example, I'm indicating which item of the citation it was and what was the URL, and then I'm aggregating that all of that info, then supplying all of that to AI. So I'm actually like doing all of that with citations, because if, for example, we're adding some stats or some data in the article or some facts that we want to support, so I want the AI to be able to see that, okay, this info is from this source, and therefore we can reference it in the article, and that's gonna just look better. Because if you're adding random stats without backing them up, it's gonna sound very suspicious, and that's another way how some articles can look like they were written by AI. So I'm adding some sources, and then AI, in this case Anthropic, Claude, can decide if they want to link to that source or not. And again, I have different prompt, like separate prompt for the section writing, and for this I'm using Claude 3.7 again. Oops. Yep. And then when I'm actually adding this info in the Airtable, before the writing, I actually get the record. And then after the writing, what I'm doing is that in the article, I'm supplying what we just fetched from the Airtable, and then appending the outputted information from the AI. That means for each section, we're basically getting the previous information and then just appending that new information at the bottom, and then updating the Airtable. And also I'm doing this because I'm getting the article that was like the previous sections that were already written, and I'm supplying to AI to basically let it know that this is what we wrote previously. Let me check where. Yeah, so for example, these are the previous sections of the article, and I'm supplying this. So first, it wouldn't repeat the same information over and over again. It would know what it wrote about, and later on, we can just append that information in the Airtable. So that's how this goes. Section is written section by section, appended in the Airtable until we have a final article. Then again, I'm using a limit node just to get the single Airtable ID to not, make random requests to AI. And this is where I do the final enhancements of the AI article. So the first thing that I'm doing is actually enhancing the flow of the article. Again, I'm supplying the article here, all the information we need. But why I'm doing that is because when we write section by section, sometimes it can look like those sections are not connected, and it might look like it's a bit off. The article just doesn't flow very well. So this part is necessary because what it does, then AI goes over the article and it tries to understand which parts don't flow together, and it just updates those particular parts. It doesn't It doesn't rewrite the whole article. It just updates the flow. And for this, actually, I'm using OpenAI 4.1, and there is a very good reason for that, because when I noticed that when I used Claude for adding the flow, Claude would often return cut off the article. It would produce like an output that's half of the article and not all of it. And I didn't really like that. It was bugging me, so I just changed it to OpenAI. So even though we're writing the sections with Claude, then we're actually updating the articles with OpenAI. Then I'm using another prompt to remove not allowed words. This is basically very simple. There are certain patterns that AI usually does that, picture this in today's world, that immediately gives out that AI written it, and there are certain words that also give out that AI wrote it. So I'll just say that, okay, replace these words with something else, and that way again we're gonna make it look like AI didn't write it. Also, it's gonna be a bit better score on the AI checkers. And for people that are going to be read it, they're not going to be reading like unnecessary fluff like picture this and stuff like that. And then the last prompt is we're just making sure that AI inserted the target keyword, because we're trying to link our customer's website to that blog. And then finally, we're adding the article to the Airtable. So now let's give it a look at the final article. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy, I'm gonna delete this one, I'm gonna paste it from Markdown, and we have the article over here. So immediately I can see that, for example, for me, there is still room for improvement when it comes to prompts. For example, like I mentioned that I supplied some sources, but it didn't include those sources in most cases. So how I would update this, I would probably reprompt it to add some additional sources on top of it, so it would look more legitimate. So we would back up, for example, these numbers or these numbers. Yeah, these numbers as well would be good to back them up when it comes to this. But yeah, overall, I like the structure of it. Maybe we could add some more H3 tags in between the sections, because now there's a lot of text. And of course, with some simple tweaks to the prompts, I could update the output of this. But overall, I like the output and I think it looks good. The last step that we can do is check in the AI detector. Hopefully it's not going to be above 90, but you never know. It's always different because, there's also a different algorithm when it comes to checking. So we got 24% chance written by AI. So even lower than the previous. So we can see that introduction looks like it was written by AI. And then pretty much a lot of it seems like it was written by a human. So I think the final result is really good. It still can be improved, but I'm gonna add a link where you can download this. It actually took me a while to build this system out. I actually built this one for one of the clients, not this exact one, very similar. I just rebuilt it for myself so I would be able to share it. But yeah, I think it looks pretty good. So again, there's going to be a link in the description where you can download it. If you enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya.